Today, I will read from the Chicago addresses of Swamiji. The first chapter responds to welcome at the World's Parliament of Religions, Chicago, 11th September 1893. First, we will recite the Pranam mantra of Swamiji. Om Namah Sriyati Rajaya Vivekananda Suray Satchit Sukha Swarupaya Swamine Tapaharine. Our salutations at the holy feet of Swamiji. Swamiji, addressed that day at Chicago, started speaking like this. At the World's Parliament of Religions, Chicago, 11 September 1893. Sisters and brothers of America, it fills my heart with joy unspeakable to rise in response to the warm and cordial welcome which you have given us. I thank you in the name of the most ancient order of monks in the world. I thank you in the name of the Mother of Religions, and I thank you in the name of the millions and millions of Hindu people of all classes and sects. My thanks also to some of the speakers on this platform who, referring to the delegates from the Orient, have told you that these men from far-off nations may well claim the honor of bearing to different lands the idea of toleration. I am proud to belong to a religion which has taught the world both tolerance and universal acceptance. We believe not only in universal toleration, but we accept all religions as true. I am proud to belong to a nation which has sheltered the persecuted and the refugees of all religions and all nations of the earth. I am proud to tell you that we have gathered in our bosom the purest remnant of the Israelites who came to southern India and took refuge with us in the very year in which their holy temple was shattered to pieces by Roman tyranny. I am proud to belong to the religion which has sheltered and is still fostering the remnant of the grand Zoroastrian nation. I will quote to you, brethren, a few lines from a hymn which I remember to have repeated from my earliest boyhood, which is every day repeated by millions of human beings. As the different streams have their sources in different places, all mingle their water in the sea, so, Lord, the different paths which men take through different tendencies, various though they appear, crooked or straight, all lead to Thee. The present convention, which is one of the most august assemblies ever held, is in itself a vindication, a declaration to the world of the wonderful doctrine preached in the Gita. Whosoever comes to me through whatsoever form, I reach him. All men are struggling through paths which in the end lead to me. Sectarianism, bigotry, and its horrible descendant fanaticism have long possessed this beautiful earth. They have filled the earth with violence, drenched it often and often with human blood, destroyed civilization, and sent whole nations to despair. Had it not been for these horrible demons, human society would be far more advanced than it is now. But their time is come, and I fervently hope that the bell that tolled this morning in honor of this convention may be the death knell of all fanaticism, of all persecutions with the sword or with the pen, and of all uncharitable feelings between persons wending their way to the same goal. The next lecture that Swamiji delivered, titled as Why We Disagree, 15th September 1893. I will tell you a little story. You have heard the eloquent speaker who has just finished say, "Let us cease from abusing each other," and he was very sorry that there should be always so much variance. But I think I should tell you a story which would illustrate the cause of this variance. A frog lived in a well. It had lived there for a long time. It was born there and brought up there, and yet was a little small frog. Of course, the evolutionists were not there to tell us whether the frog lost its eyes or not, but for our story's sake, we must take it for granted that it had its eyes and that it every day cleansed the water of all the worms and bacilli that lived with an energy that would do credit to our modern bacteriologists. In this way it went on and became a little sleek and fat. Well, one day another frog that lived in the sea came and fell into the well. "Where are you from?" "I am from the sea." "The sea? How big is that? Is it as big as my well?" And he took a leap from one side of the well to the other. "My friend," said the frog of the sea, "how do you compare the sea with your little well?" Then the frog took another leap and asked, "Is your sea so big?" "What nonsense you speak, to compare the sea with your well." "Well then," said the frog of the well, "nothing can be bigger than my well. There can be nothing bigger than this. This fellow is a liar, so turn him out." That has been the difficulty all the while. I am a Hindu. I am sitting in my own little well and thinking that the whole world is my little well. The Christian sits in his little well and thinks the whole world is his well. The Mohammedan sits in his little well and thinks that it is the whole world. I have to thank you of America for the great attempt you are making to break down the barriers of this little world of ours, and hope that in the future the Lord will help you to accomplish your purpose. These were the two lectures. Now I will read from the cuttings of the newspaper that was published in the next day, focusing Swamiji as their headlines. I am reading from the newspaper Chicago Record, September 11, 1893, Parlor Talk. 4 leaders of religious thought were sitting in Dr. Barrow's parlor. The Jain, George Condon, the missionary who has passed 16 years in China, Swami Vivekananda, the learned Brahmin. The Swami was a Kshatriya, not a Brahmin, Hindu, and Dr. John H. Barrows, the Chicago Presbyterian. These 4 talked as if they were brothers of one faith. The Hindu is of smooth countenance. His rather fleshy face is bright and intelligent. He wears an orange turban and a robe of the same color. His English is very good. "I have no home," said he. "I travel about from one college to another in India, lecturing to the students. Before starting for America, I had been for some time in Madras. Since arriving in this country, I have been treated with utmost courtesy and kindness. It is very gratifying to us to be recognized in this Parliament, which may have such an important bearing on the religious history of the world. We expect to learn much and take back some great truths to our 15 crore faithful Brahmins. Chicago Inter-Ocean, September 21, 1893, another newspaper. Religion is not the crying need of India. Swami Vivekananda. At the close of the reading of Mr. Headland's paper on religion in Peking, Dr. Momery announced that the other speakers bulletined for the evening had failed to appear. It was but 9 o'clock and the main auditorium and galleries were well filled. There was an outburst of applause as they caught sight of the Hindu monk Vivekananda sitting in his orange robe and scarlet turban upon the platform. This popular Hindu responded to the generous applause by saying that he did not come to speak tonight. He took occasion, however, to criticize many of the statements made in the paper by Mr. Headland. Referring to the poverty which prevails in China, he said that the missionaries would do better to work in appeasing hunger than in endeavoring to persuade the Chinese to renounce their faith of centuries and embrace Christianity as the price of food. And then the Hindu stepped back on the platform and whispered to Bishop Kane of the Catholic Church a moment. He then resumed his address by saying that Bishop Kane had told him that Americans would not be offended at honest criticism. He said he had heard of all the terrible things and horrible conditions which prevail in China, but he had not heard that any asylums had been erected by Christians for remedying all these difficulties. He said, "Christian brethren of America, you are so fond of sending out missionaries to save the souls of heathens. I ask you, what have you done and are doing to save their bodies from starvation?" A great applause. In India, there are around lots of men and women living on an average of a little more than 50 cents a month. I have seen them living for years upon wild flowers. Whenever there was a little famine, hundreds of thousands died of starvation. Christian missionaries come and offer life, but only on condition that the Hindus become Christians, abandoning the faith of their fathers and forefathers. Is it right? There are hundreds of asylums, but if the Mohammedans or the Hindus go there, they would be kicked out. There are thousands of asylums erected by Hindus where anybody would be received. There are hundreds of churches that have been erected with the assistance of the Hindus, but no Hindu temples for which a Christian has given money, given a penny. What the East needs. Brethren of America, the crying evil of the East is not religion. We have more than religion enough. What they want is bread, but they are given a stone. Applause. It is an insult to a suffering man dying of hunger to preach to him metaphysics. Therefore, if you wish to illustrate the meaning of brotherhood, treat the Hindu more kindly, even though he be a Hindu and is faithful to his religion. Send missionaries to them to teach them how better to earn a better piece of bread and not to teach them metaphysical nonsense. Great applause. And then the monk said he was in ill health today and wished to be excused, but there were thunders of applause and cries of "Go on," and Mr. Vivekananda continued. The paper just read something about the miserable and ignorant priest. The same may be said of India. I am one of those monks who have been described as beggarly. That is the pride of my life. Applause. I am proud in that sense to be Christ-like. I eat what I have today and think not of tomorrow. Behold the lilies of the field. They toil not, neither do they spin. The Hindu carries that out literally. Many gentlemen present in Chicago, sitting on this platform, can testify that for the last 12 years, I never knew whence my next meal was coming. I am proud to be a beggar for the sake of the Lord. The idea in the East is that to preach or teach anything for the sake of money is low and vulgar, but to teach the name of the Lord for pay is such a degradation as would cause the priest to lose caste and be spat upon. There is one suggestion in the paper that is true. If the priests of China and India were organized, there is an enormous amount of potential energy which could be used for the regeneration of society and humanity. I endeavored to organize it in India, but failed for lack of money. It may be I shall get the help I want in America. But we know it is very hard for a heathen to get any help from Christian people. Great applause. I have heard so much of this land of freedom, of liberty, and freedom of thought that I am not discouraged. I thank you, ladies and gentlemen. And then the popular visitor bowed gracefully and sought to retire with a graceful smile, but the audience cried to him to proceed. Mr. Vivekananda, fairly bubbling with an expression of good nature, then explained the Hindu theory of reincarnation. At the close of the address, Dr. Memory, a delegate from England, said that he now understood why the newspaper had well called this parliament an approach to the millennium. These are the great writings from the newspapers. Reading from the next newspaper in America, New York Critic, November 11, 1893, the Chicago Letter. It was an outgrowth of the Parliament of Religions, which opened our eyes to the fact that the philosophy of the ancient creeds contained much beauty for the moderns. When we had once clearly perceived this, our interest in their exponents quickened, and with characteristic eagerness we set out in pursuit of knowledge. The most available means of obtaining it after the close of the Parliament was through the address and lectures of Swami Vivekananda, who is still in this city. His original purpose in coming to this city, in this country, was to interest Americans in the starting of new industries among the Hindus, but he has abandoned this for the present because he finds that as the Americans are the most charitable people in the world, every man with a purpose comes here for assistance in carrying it out. When asked about the relative condition of the poor here and in India, he replied that our poor would be princes there, and he had been taken through the worst quarter of the city only to find it, from the standpoint of his knowledge, comfortable and even pleasant. A Brahmin of the Brahmins, Vivekananda gave his rank to join the brotherhood of monks, where all pride of caste is voluntarily relinquished, and yet he bears the marks of race upon his person. His culture, his eloquence, and his fascinating personality has given us a new idea of Hindu civilization. He is an interesting figure. His fine, intelligent, mobile face, in its setting of yellows, has his deep musical voice prepossessing one of one's in his favor. The Swami quoted the passage in his letter to Sri Haridas Biharidas Desai, written November 15, 1893. So it is not strange that he has taken up by the literary clubs, has preached and lectured in churches until the life of Buddha and the doctrine of his faith have grown familiar to us. He speaks without notes, presenting his facts and his conclusions with the greatest art, the most convincing sincerity, and rising at times to a rich, inspiring eloquence. As learned and cultivated, apparently as the most accomplished Jesuit, he also something Jesuitical in the character of his mind. but though the little sarcasms thrown into his discourses are as keen as a rapier, they are so delicate as to be lost on many of his hearers. Nevertheless, his courtesy is unfailing, for this thrust are never pointed so directly at our customs as to be rude. At present, he contents himself with enlightening us in regard to his religion and the words of its philosophers. He looked forward to the time when we shall pass beyond idolatry, now necessary in his opinion to the ignorant classes, beyond worship, even to a knowledge of the presence of God in nature, of the divinity and responsibility of work out your own salvation. He says with the dying Buddha, I cannot help you, no man can help you, help yourself. Reading from another paper, Daily Cardinal, University of Wisconsin at Madison, November 21, 1893. Religions of India. Vivekananda, the Hindu orator, delivers an interesting lecture. A crowded house greeted Vivekananda at the Congregational Church last evening. The speaker was attired in native costume, which consisted of a cream turban with yellow gown and cardinal sash. The first part of the lecture was devoted to illustrating the many resemblances of Sanskrit, the language of the Hindus, to that of English. They have no word in their language which means salvation. To them it is freedom from bondage. They believe that man's real nature is perfect and that cause and effect controls all except God. Religion was aptly illustrated by the story of the blind men who each felt of a portion of a huge elephant and each thought the animal like the particular part he felt of it. So with religion, each of the various sects have a part of the whole truth, while truth itself is infinite and no man can say, I have seen it all. The Hindu belief was shown to be one of the most charitable of beliefs. Persecution is something unknown in India. There is no such word in their language. The lecturer challenged the world to show an instance in Hindu progress of a Christian missionary being persecuted. A Greek historian writing of them said, no Hindu man is dishonest, no Hindu woman unchaste. Vivekananda came to this country and India in the interest of the World Congress of Religions, and his lecture last evening on the religions of India was an inspiration to all who heard him. He has a pleasant, clear-cut, dusky face and a decidedly impressive manner and bearing. His voice is low and pleasant, with a secret something which rivets your attention at the start. That's all, friends. Thank you very much. Hopefully these lectures warm all of us, and given us our great thoughts that India had for over the years. Swamiji preached those thoughts in the land of America, and today we are commemorating the 127th celebration of the famous Chicago speech. It is also a great day for all of us to remember and practice those words of Swamiji in our daily life. Thank you, friends. Thank you. Jai Swamiji.